All right. Thanks for having me. I know you guys have been glued to your phones to find out who the next presenter will be today. So we'll just jump into it. We are Pollen Sense. We're still a startup, but we have been around for a while. You guys might have seen us in the news a couple times this summer. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're actually pitching not our core company, but an opportunity for somebody to take some of our technology and bring it to a new market, a market that we haven't reached yet. So let's talk about that. Everybody talks about suffering when it comes to startups, and oftentimes suffering is maybe people don't like user interfaces on something or whatever. In our case, suffering is actual suffering, so that makes it easier. We're talking about almost a third of the population of the world has asthma and allergies, or allergies, and it causes all kinds of misery, lots of lost days of work, but it also, as many researchers, even here in Utah, have discovered over the years, actually increases other health problems, like a lot of people suffering from heart disease, cancer, whatever, can be actually tied to air quality. So air quality is a big deal, and leads to a lot of suffering. And so the current solutions that are out there, unfortunately, are just not sufficient. The main thing, everybody probably knows what the air quality index is. This comes from air quality monitors. The monitors basically tell you how many parts of a certain size of particle are in the air, but they don't tell you much else about specifically what it is. You can get a lab-based test kit, so I can set out a little petri dish to test for mold or a spore trap, or I can send this away to a lab and find out a few days later, oh, yep, you did have an air quality problem. But if I want to know today, or if I want to know on an ongoing basis, unfortunately, for things like asbestos and pollen, mold, these things which we care a lot about because they affect human health, and even specific kinds of, say, silica dust that you'll have in a factory or an indoor situation, there just really isn't a good solution. It seems like a major problem, and it actually is fairly difficult technology-wise to develop a tool that does this. And so these little air quality monitors are fairly cheap, and so that's remained the status quo. But it's definitely a problem. There's just not a good solution at this point. So what we have is some technology we've developed for outdoor air quality, primarily has been our focus, but it applies really well to this. We have focused on particularly pollen counts. Most people don't know that pollen counts, up until now, were not real things. They were basically computer model based. When you go and buy allergy medicine at a pharmacy, they would track that and say, oh, pollen must be high. So it would be like trying to predict weather based on umbrella sales. So it was computer model based, and so what we brought was the first automated, scalable solution that could actually, continually monitor the outdoor pollen counts and the mold counts. So this technology applies really well for indoor air as well. There are pollen indoor problems. There are also, of course, mold and other problems indoors as well. And the device can be applied to that market. What we have is this device. It continually samples the air. It uses machine vision. It has a microscope. You can see the raw frames, but nobody wants to stare at raw frames. That's why we built this. So it uses artificial intelligence to recognize what the different particulates are on the surface. So we've invested heavily in developing this device, and again, we've applied it to this particular outdoor air market. And we're working on a next generation of this. Right now, it costs us about $1,500 to make a device. Our emphasis has not been on selling devices. It's been more on building this network and an app and making the data available. But again, it applies. So what we're proposing is to have someone take it to a new market, the indoor market. You have industrial situations, you have business situations. You don't know what mold, what the air quality is inside in a factory scenario or an industrial scenario. And then of course home, everybody wants to ensure that their family is safe. Again, right now you don't know if you smell something that seems like mold, is it actually in your area? How is it affecting you? Especially down south, mold is a huge problem. You know, very many houses have mold, and they just never know how much somebody's getting. The overall market, you know, is somewhere in the $10 billion and fairly quickly growing because, you know, people are very conscientious. COVID has probably increased the degree to which people are conscientious about what they're breathing. So the sales model we're proposing is multifaceted, and some of this would be up to whomever takes this opportunity to decide exactly how to attack it. But you have direct sales, excuse me, to the industry. You have the potential for renting a device that could be put in a home, kind of like you rent a steamer vac or something. You could put an industrial level device in a home. You also have higher end homes that might want to have a continually monitoring device in their home. And then there's all kinds of channels with HVAC, home restoration companies, air filtration, duct cleaning. Anybody that could really benefit from improving the air quality in a home could also be a potential partner here. So revenue sources would include the sensor sales, the rental that we've excuse me, talked about, service contracts on those things, and then data sales. There are quite a few people that would be very interested in knowing the situation with air quality, indoor as well. And you can also sell particular upsells, software services in particular, also custom vision profiles. If somebody's looking for a particular type of particle, they can maybe pay for a custom profile to be built on that. So our exit strategy, in addition to the standard, you know, maybe investment banker kind of investment in the future, there are very particular industry companies who have already expressed an interest in this, HVAC companies, air quality specialists already, as well as hardware manufacturers. We've been talking to Honeywell, for instance, and they're very interested in this device and in these opportunities. Honeywell already sells indoor air quality solutions, so it you know, in that example fits really well. So what would we provide to this venture? We have already developed this technology, as I mentioned. So we also have an app that we've built, and it's not just an app that just shows numbers coming off of a device. It's a whole platform for content management and delivering articles and location and time-specific content, videos. So our particular app, Pollen Wise, which we use for the outdoor air quality, is kind of a solution to help them overall improve their situation and understand the allergies and what they can do about it. It's not just delivering the data from the devices. And so this could be tapped for indoor for all kinds of opportunities as well. So without being a programmer, basically somebody can add content and make it situationally specific aware. We have a web platform as well, allows somebody to bring up graphs and export data and do all those kinds of things. We bring aerobiology expertise, and we would act as advisors. And we have specific case studies. Right now, our CEO, Landon, over here, he's been working with some indoor air quality experts and actually putting some of our devices in indoor scenarios, capturing mold or seeing if there is mold. And so we're already working on those case studies now, and we'll be increasing those case studies over time. And then we already have warm contacts, as I've mentioned. We've been in contact with Honeywell. We have other potential partners as well, so we'll be bringing those warm contacts to bear. And then the ask in return is that somebody taking this opportunity would start and run the business. Perhaps an MBA type person or an entrepreneur that is ready for the next thing. This is kind of a tech transfer kind of thing, so you don't necessarily have to be a pollen expert, but if you want to take an existing technology that's already been developed, bring it to market, hire some people, get some sales, maybe a developer or two, invest. We're asking $750K for a pre-order on devices because we're preparing a batch to manufacture for next year, so that that allows you to have some inventory to work with, and then another $750 for the actual technology purchase. And in addition to that, there's whatever you want to invest to actually get it off the ground, and that would be up to you. That's your discretion. What we would take is 40%. We would want to make sure you have the majority ownership so that you can have the controlling interest and can run it the way you please. The only thing we would ask is that we would give you this exclusive launch window. So within 2.5 years, we would want you to reach $1 million in revenue, and so that's what we're proposing. Questions?
Yeah, I actually have 3 questions that are kind of tied together. So one is, like, with the homes, for example, if somebody wants to install it in a high-end home, it's usually a bigger home. So I see the box you have there, and it's quite big, and I don't think people would want multiple of those around the home. Can that act as a hub when you have smaller devices that are placed as satellites around the home?
I don't know if Landon wants to weigh in, but I think there's a couple things that could be done. First of all, the device that you saw, again, is our sort of initial industrial device.
Right.
We are working on, even our next version of the device, we're working on scaling it down, both in terms of size, price, and making something that would be a little more suitable for a home environment. It would probably be up to the individual, but there are strategic places that the device could be put. For instance, on the intake part of your HVAC, where you're going to be pulling air from multiple locations, would be a potential. If you have a basement, if you have an area that's suspected of mold, you could put it there. You could move it around. So there are options. But over time, we do hope to move to where you could potentially, if you have a large space, actually have multiple devices around and make sure you're continually monitoring those. It would depend on the use case of that person, that situation.
Okay, and for the data in general, is it collectively gathered, or is it just kind of for that one user, or is there a way to tap into the collective data gathered from all locations?
Yeah, good question. So it's a cloud-based device. You give it internet and you give it power. And so everything goes ultimately up into our cloud of data. So we would have all of the data. So it would be up to you to work out some contract. And what we've done for outdoor air is that we sort of reserve the right to use the data, and then if somebody wants to buy an outdoor device, they get a license to use the data that's generated from their device as they see fit, but we also get to use it for collective use. So you could work out a similar situation probably for indoor air. So.
One thing I might have to screen. One thing I would add to that is for our outdoor app, Pollen Wise, we solicit feedback on how are you feeling today, and we help determine what thresholds they're sensitive to. In an indoor situation, you even have more control on that, and you could say, you know, I'm feeling it today, I'm feeling something today, and we could kick on an air cleaner, an air purifier. We could warn people in neighborhoods who have the same, you know, if we see a trend, we could warn people. So there's a lot you can do with the data.
Yeah, and last one is not so much of a question, more as an additional market maybe. It's for real estate agents and appraisers that could use something like that to go in. And obviously there are devices they can use now to identify specific locations for mold, but that's more if you have like a water damage or something. But if this captures kind of a broader spectrum as far as the air itself, it could be an additional tool for them.
Yeah, kind of a certification. You know, we've checked this house; it's mold free. That kind of thing would definitely be a very useful thing. We've been recently been doing some of the case studies that I mentioned with restoration companies. Apparently, they are contacted multiple times a day by somebody saying, "I just want to know if I have mold," and you know that there's not really a great solution that they can offer, short of having somebody come out, sample it, send it off to a lab. So this is basically, the device is a lab in a machine. So it does that continuously for them. So yeah, it's a great idea.
Another thing that we've encountered is an insurance company that provides business insurance wants, you know, they go in and do regular inspections to mitigate lawsuits and things like that, slips, trips, things like that. They're interested in going in with that sensor and just making sure there's not a mold issue. One story that they shared with me was there was a Kmart, when Kmart was a thing, that went completely out of business because of a mold infestation that they did not catch soon enough. They had a leak, and it got worse and worse and worse. The remediation got so bad they couldn't afford it.
It goes both ways as well. One of the case studies we did, it was this crawl space. I think I actually have some pictures in the appendix. There was this crawl space, and it looked terrible. It was you could see all the mold on the rafters. It looked like, oh man, this is toxic. We need to go in with a hazmat suit, do this huge, like, tear out the floor, whatever. It looked awful. We put our device in there. No spores. So the mold was growing on the surface, but it hadn't released its spores into the air. Knowing that completely changed the way that they handled the situation. They came in, they dried it out. We monitored it the entire time to make sure that it didn't release spores while they were drying it. And what could have been, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars of a repair and lots of maybe overprotection of the individuals doing the repair turned into, oh, no big deal. We dried it out, we're done, and pretty much low cost remediation. So it could be a game changer certainly for restoration. Any other questions?
So in the home, it detects and monitors, right? Your machine doesn't filter, no remediation. That's a separate issue?
Correct.
Okay. One industry I was thinking that I think could really use this. We're a nation that's getting older. There are a lot of, old folks' homes, that sort of thing. And with chronic health, asthma, respiratory issues are ginormous. I imagine some of those facilities, institutions could be very interested in something like this.
Yeah, so like a care home, care facility.
Yeah. Great feedback.
Yeah, I know.
Great presentation. Why separate it? Why not keep it together?
So, good question. And by the way, the question I asked you was actually a separate separation that we decided to keep together. But so there's lots of ways we can apply our sensors and lots of different directions we can go. And focus for a startup is just so incredibly critical. And this market is almost entirely a separate market. There really is very little overlap. The only potential overlap is that, especially in an industrial situation, you very often will want to have a comparison. So a device outdoors and a device indoors. And then I can say, you know, here's the outdoor air. There's a lot of mold outside, and yeah, there's some mold inside, but you know, the differential isn't that much. And so you can compare those is important. So beyond that, though, the market is pretty much the same. And so basically, if we were to pursue this, it would be a huge distraction. It also, one of the reasons that we're doing this at this time is it actually allows us to do some fundraising and also get some of the devices out. We want to have a large enough batch of devices produced next year, and so this allows us to increase the volume of devices, so it helps this new industry, but it also helps us. And so we wouldn't have time probably to pursue this anyway. It would distract us, and so this allows somebody to come in, capture a pretty close to blue ocean market without us being heavily distracted, and in fact actually helps us in our main focus. And otherwise, it would just probably have to wait another year or two before we got to this market. So, yeah.
Nate, we have a question from one of our online viewers. They asked, what does your IP look like on your hardware technology?
Yeah, we have several patents and patent pendings happening. You know, we've been issued at least one, and the others are in progress. So there's quite a bit of proprietary technology. As I mentioned, we've developed this device from scratch. It was not easy. 6 years ago, you know, we started tinkering with this in the basement, kind of playing with surface microscopy and how could we pull this off? Because traditionally, you have a big spore trap and you capture particles on a medium, and then once a day roughly you'll stain a microscope slide, and you'll sit there and count for 3 hours. Landon's background is in this. He's an aerobiologist by trade.
We only did this so I could stop counting manually. That's the only reason.
Yeah. So Landon's PhD work was in this field, and he thought this is really stupid in this era that I'm having to count every single individual, especially with his allergies, having to count every single particle. And again, most people think that this is already a solved problem. They see the pollen count and they assume, just like with the temperature readings and whatever, that there's all these devices out there that are just capturing this information. It just hasn't. It's not the case. So somebody had to do this, and we get daily testimonials from people on the Pollen Sense outdoor side saying, like, this is completely changing the game for me. If somebody suffers from seasonal allergies up till this point, the only thing that they could do was basically take their meds for 3 months. I mean, there really wasn't a lot of help as far as easing their suffering. So what this does for them is, should I go for a morning walk or should I do it in the afternoon? Well, you can see the counts throughout the day in their area. Makes a huge difference, and we're getting lots of testimonials of people saying this changes their lives. So we expect very similar to be the case for the indoor as well. Maybe even more so because it's more direct, personal.
Hey guys, this is super cool. I love this. I think it's really innovative. One thing that did cross my mind was, have you thought about the market for, radon mitigation, asbestos, some of the more harmful things that people see in older homes? And is that something, I don't know if this would just be distracting as you were addressing his question, but including that as part of your service to bring in maybe some of your employees as customer service to assist in radon mitigation if they haven't been tested in their homes and things like that, aside from just collecting the data?
Yeah, so definitely some of the partners that I was mentioning, I think that would be a really important part of this business. If it was just a matter of selling some devices, device sales, would be one thing, but actually providing a solution is probably the data-related things, and the solution providing is probably going to be a much more interesting and lucrative part of this. And part of that would be the mitigation side of it. So it's one thing to say, yep, report you have mold, and it's another to say, you have some mold. Here's a partner in your area. They'll be out tomorrow if you want them to be. And so, that's a big part of it. It's what you bring up with radon is interesting. Probably a really good solution is to not just use our device, as you're mentioning. In some cases, like a big upsell would be, we bring in a comprehensive unit that measures a bunch of other factors that are our device doesn't measure gases and things like that. It's a completely different kind of device. But if you had another, there are already existing technology devices for this, for radon and carbon monoxide, those kinds of things. You could have another instrument that you could set side by side and do a comprehensive test for somebody, and then already have your partners squared away, as far as who's going to come in and do the mitigation. Yeah. A lot of people ask if our device measures COVID, and we're talking like 2 or 3 orders of magnitude smaller than what we're seeing, viruses and things like that. What we're seeing are particulates in the 30 to 50 micron range or so. We can see down to about a micron. So we targeted a very specific place because, again, this is something that isn't readily done right now, other than just counting how many are in a certain size range. All right. Thanks so much for all the feedback. Is that it? All right. Thank you.
Wait, we have one more question for you. What can the 1MC community do for you?
Well, I would say the main thing would be the network. Y'all probably know a lot of entrepreneurs. I know that's no probably. Y'all know a lot of entrepreneurs. And so within your networks, maybe if you know anybody that just sold a business, looking to move on to the next thing, something that can help humanity as well as make some money, this would be, I think, a really good business model for them to tackle. And so if you spread the word, basically, would be probably the main thing. Yeah. Okay.